Okay, so we're coming back here with episode 4, which is going to be dedicated to paint. I've changed the camera a little bit, so it's more at an angle. So I know in the last few videos, I do a lot of work down here, and you're not seeing a lot of stuff. So hopefully with me adjusting the camera a little bit, you'll be able to see a little bit more of where I actually work on my bench. So that's kind of the first thing. But the things that we're going to kind of focus on in this episode is going to be some primer, some base paint, and then the Italian smoke ring camouflage. So I have a few thoughts about how I'm going to do it, a few things I'm going to test, and we'll see what works out in the end and what yields the best results. To start out, like I said, I'm going to use this decal set from Sky Models, which is a very good set. But the only downside to this set is it only shows one side of each particular aircraft. It doesn't give you both side views, top view, or anything like that. So I'm working on Ennio's plane, which is here, and I mentioned in the first episode that this is incorrect. It shows the splotch camo and not the smoke ring camo that we see in the reference photo. So this guide is basically only going to be good for placing decals. So, you know, just too bad it's not correct and they don't give you all the different angles of his plane. But luckily, Edward did a reboxing of Hasegawa's kit, and they actually have a full paint guide for Ennio's plane, which includes both sides and top and bottom. So this would be a good guide for where I need to, lay down smoke rings, what they kind of look like. Obviously, I hope this is off some type of reference, but a lot of the stuff that I've only seen of his plane usually shows about kind of this back section here or the nose. And this looks pretty accurate for what I've seen in photos, but, obviously it's pretty hard to get, time period reference photos for the Italian Air Force. There's not a lot of them out there. But this is a great little guide, and I'm glad that I could find it. It's on Edward's website. You can go dig into it in their instruction book, and you can download their PDF, and I just printed out this page for their 202 kit that they reboxed. I can't remember what year it was, but maybe 2016, 17, maybe like that. I might be wrong, but it wasn't too long ago. And then some other things I have. So they had a smoke ring decal set that they released. So I just went on to Edward's website again, and I printed out their direction book for it, which is just this guide here, which only shows top and bottom, but the top is pretty valuable to get another look of kind of a general layout for the smoke rings. But they actually made smoke ring decals. So this is printed to scale. This is the 148 set. My plan is for these is I was going to scan them into my Cricut and see if I could cut some masks. So I'll talk about that process here in a moment. But that's kind of some of the things that we're going to talk about here, and what I'm going to test before I actually go put one of those into practice. So the first one, this is just kind of a random wing. It's been undercoated in MRP Fine Surface Primer black primer, and it's been overcoated in MRP's Color 4 for Italian Air Force, however you pronounce that. I'm not going to butcher the Italian language here on camera. So it's been overcoated in that, kind of in a model fashion to give it some wear. And then the plan for this piece is going to be one half is going to be, I'm going to freehand the smoke ring camouflage with my airbrush. I did some testing the other day. This is this glossy kind of dental paper. It's very slick. So what I did was I just kind of took some shapes I saw, in reference photos, and I just tried them out. And the results aren't bad. Definitely needs some refining, and definitely got to think about paint ratios and how it flows out of your airbrush. But if I can get this kind of result on a very glossy surface, I think I can do all right on this kind of semi-matte surface without it spidering or anything like that. To get this result, I did have to thin the paint out pretty significantly. So for this, I used MRP's Color 2, which is this olive color, and then I thinned it 80% with Mr. Rapid Thinner. That way it kind of dries a little bit faster, it doesn't spider as much, and it just dries a lot faster, so it doesn't give you any issues. So I used 80% Mr. Rapid Thinner to 30% of the Color 2, and that's how I got these results. And they're not bad. If you look at reference photos, there are some feather edges. You know, obviously this one's a little bit too heavy, but I could always go touch that in with the brown color later on. But this is a pretty good result that I'm pretty happy with. And it's just kind of slow and steady. You start at a point, maybe trace it onto your test piece, and just work away along with your airbrush. And then for the second half of the brown piece, what I'm planning on doing is I saw a guy do some kind of like German night camo, like squiggly lines and stuff on the internet. I can't remember if it was Instagram or on YouTube, but he used AK pencils. So I have a full set of AK pencils over here. I'm not going to pull them out right now, but what I'll do is I'll get a color that is close to this green, and then I will kind of trace out the smoke rings on it, and then what I'll do is I'll kind of fade them in and out with water, since they are water-based pencils. And then for the olive color, the plan is to cut masks either by hand or with the Cricut, and then lay them down, spray the overcoat of the brown, and then remove the mask. And obviously the smoke ring will appear. Okay, so this is the result on the tan piece. This side is the AK pencils, and unfortunately, in that set, you know, I have this set right here. Oops, let me zoom out here. This is the AK set I have. There really isn't a color in here that matches this olive green, which is unfortunate. So this test was done with just this olive green, AK pencil 10006. And to prepare for laying this stuff down, I sprayed a matte coat over it because this really needs a matte coat for this stuff to stick. I didn't sharpen it completely. I kind of left it kind of blunt, like here. This is the last sharpening I did as I finished up. And then I really kind of, when I worked on it, I kept the pencil perpendicular as possible. This side here is airbrushed with the MRP colors, and you know what? It looks pretty good. The one thing, like on this guy right here, I was retracing and I kind of made a boo-boo. So you kind of have to worry about that. The other good thing about using the AK color pencils, since they're watercolor, if you screw up, you can just wet a cotton swab and you can basically just rub it straight off of the model and then start over. With this, you really need to make sure that, you know, either you pencil down your lines. I didn't pencil anything down. I just kind of looked at the sheet over here, and I just kind of freehanded as I went. But probably if I do airbrush, I'll definitely lay down a light pencil line so I know what I'm following. But you do run the risk of, you know, once you paint and then retrace, you might have some boo-boos. But you know, if you look at these photos of some they look pretty rough. So you might be able to get away with it. Been getting some other little things taken care of in the background. So I just got the canopy parts masked up with, you know, the help of a Edward mask set. I love these things. These are probably the number one thing I buy for any kit is a mask set. It's just, I know you can, this is a pretty easy one to mask. It's basically just rectangles, but it's just so quick and easy and painless. So that's on there. These are going to get ready to get installed onto the main fuselage. I did both windscreens because I'm not 100% sure which windscreen he had on his 202, so I need to do some checks on my references to see if he had either the armored windscreen or the unarmored windscreen. So, all right, so I got the Gunsight installed. I don't know how well this will pick up, but it's right there. And then from the front, and then you can see it from the side, and yeah, it's tiny, it's fragile. It's a good thing that Edward gives you a bunch of the clear parts, because I lost 2 of them in the process and got that, so I actually have 3 left. So hey, that's a win. But that's in there, looking the part. It's a tiny little piece, but it does look pretty good. All right, so I got the windscreen installed with some the Tamiya Extra Thin Quick Setting glue, and I used a very, very fine pointed brush to work my way around it. There's not much framing to work around, so you really got to be careful with your glue getting onto your masks or underneath in spots you don't want. So
Just very careful application with that. He ended up having the windscreen without the extra armor, and also no mirror from what I can see from the pictures I have. See if I can bring this up here real quick. The non-armored windscreen went in, and now I'm working on getting the canopy installed. And what you need to know if you're going to build this kit is, so right now this is just a drop fit in here, and it fits really well. That fits really, really good. But what you need to know is that the back of the canopy is not sealed. It wasn't a pressurized cockpit, so there is a gap here. So you do run the risk of getting overspray into your canopy. So what I did on my canopy pieces, not only did I mask the outside of it, but inside I laid down a strip of, what is this? This is the Tamiya 10 mil tape in the middle. And then I added some masking fluid on the back edge to protect from overspray in case it goes in. It's something I'll be aware of when I'm spraying, but it's just something, just a little precaution so you're not having to, wipe your canopy later with some thinners of some sort to get overspray. So this is now ready to get temporary installed. I like to get everything installed and painted together so it all matches up when it comes to weather. So what I'm going to do here is, this is going to get temporary installed, and all I'm going to do is I'm going to just tack it into place with either some liquid frisket or a couple drops of white glue, and just tack it in on the bottom on the frame, wipe any excess off, and then it's ready to be, the rest of the primer can go on, and we're ready to go start paint. So like I said, you don't need a ton of this. This is just going to hold this in here temporarily, because my plan is to have it displayed with the canopy open at the end of the build. So this glue will just serve as it'll just tack it into place. And any excess can be cleaned up with some water on a Q-tip, and I just messed that up. It just fell into the canopy, or into the tub. So let's redo this again. Cotton bud. Just wiping any excess off. I'm just going to let the glue do its thing there and get set in place. So I realized I forgot I need to mask up the landing gear bay. And, I think one of the simplest ways to go about doing this is a good old-fashioned toilet paper mask. So what you do is you take some toilet paper, and you can tear them up into little smaller pieces, like so, like so, like so. And you're just going to take your toilet paper, you're just going to kind of gently lay them down in here. Get some tweezers to help out the process. You gotta be a little careful because some of this resin in here is pretty fragile. That's actually too much. Let's get some smaller pieces. You don't have to do it all in one go, but basically you're just gonna kind of get the most of it masked off. Okay, so then once you get that laid in there how you like it, get yourself some water over here and a pipette. And you're just going to drop a little bit of water on top of it, and it turns into kind of like temporary paper mache, and it will form in there nice and not hard, but it'll be in there. It'll also allow you to manipulate the paper a little bit more, so you can move it around. So you see it's a little more flexible now. I can get it to sit down in some areas, just adding some more water. And obviously this isn't going to affect the MRP paint because it's lacquer based, but you know, I don't know if this little amount of water will affect an acrylic, but I've never had issues with it in the past when I used to use acrylics. So yeah, there we go. That's all masked up with a simple toilet paper mask and some water. So that'll dry up over time, and then when you're ready to remove it, you can either add water to it and just pull it out with your tweezers, or you can just pull it out as is. All right, I'm about to spray primer coat down, and this is going to be over the airframe, all these spare parts that are down here. And for that, I'm using Mr. Surfacer 1500 Black. That is cut with Mr. Leveling Thinner about 50-50. You could cut it a little bit thinner if you wanted to, but I think 50-50 for me works. So this coat will get over everything, and then we'll kind of give it a once-over to make sure everything looks good. If there's any seam cleanup that needs to happen, we'll fix that, and then we'll do another coat of primer if needed. So I'm shooting this in the PS7-71, and it's at 15 PSI. And we're just going to hit everything. All right, so primer's been laid down over everything. We got the airframe all done, all the small pieces. My goal was to get to like a check phase and see if there's anything I need to fix. I see a few little rescribing marks where I slipped and a couple scratches here and there. We just need a kind of a little bit overcoat of a little bit thicker Mr. Surfacer. So I'll probably fix that in the background at some point. But the next step that I need to get to will be adding silver, a coat of alclad silver for a chipping base. But it's just far too cold in here tonight. I just looked at the thermometer, and it's 41 degrees in the garage, which for California Bay Area standards, that's cold. And I'm sitting next to a space heater, and I am just absolutely shivering. So we'll come back tomorrow, and I'll fix up the boo-boos, and hopefully we'll get some silver paint over the airframe and some other spots where we want to have some chipping, and then we'll get one step closer to actual base color. So I need to go inside and light myself on fire so I can warm up. I will catch you tomorrow. All right, so I finally got to a point with cutting some masks on my Cricut to where I saw some success. I think I went through 3 test runs of the Cricut, just kind of like tearing up my masking sheet. But then what I learned was I kind of had to like tweak with the material, since there isn't like a masking sheet material. So I tried vinyl, I tried all these other different ones. But I finally came to a setting that ended up working for the most part. Probably like 80% of the smoke rings that were cut were successful. The other, 30%, were kind of bad. But so I got, these are just some test pieces here, these 3 right here, and the masks work pretty well. So it's a 2-part mask. So there's a mask that, I'll zoom in here. I don't have them with me, they're still in the house. and these ones I just tossed after I took them off. But there's a mask that does the outside, and there's a mask that drops into the middle. So, or I can just lay down the little squiggle part, put it down, and then spray the the tan over the top of the green. But what I kind of saw in testing, I used another test piece here, is the green looks better sprayed on top of the tan than it does underneath, kind of like this masking set or this look. It's just something about the green, how it lays down, just it looks a lot more pleasing to the eye sprayed over the top of the brown. So, you know, compared to, let me grab another test piece here. You know, obviously we have a few different things here. So this is masking fluid and glue to do it. This is colored pencils. This is freehand airbrush. This is cut masks with the Cricut. These look by far the best. So if I can replicate and get, you know, the specific number of them that I want to use, you know, cut and looking good, excuse me, I think this will be the route I go. If I do run into some situations where, you know, I need to paint them down, I'll paint them down. But I think I'm going to try using the mask ones and save myself some time. All right, so coming back to it, earlier today, I went around and I took care of some little dinks and scratches, and then I used a combination of, not this stuff, here it is, Miss Surfacer 1000, and I also have 1200 over here. So Miss Surfacer 1200, and I just kind of went around and found, you know, some scratches and stuff, and I just took a paintbrush, brushed this stuff over it, let it dry for a couple minutes, and then I took some, you know, 1000 grit sanding sponge or one of these sticks, and I just lightly sanded over it, and then I sprayed some more Mr. Surfacer 1500 over the top of it to make sure everything was looking good. So a couple of areas that were, you know, a little troublesome. There's a little scratch over here that I took care of. Up here in the nose, where I blended this in, there were some scratches from the files I used. Another little scratch on the top here, and then there was a seam here that I had to rescribe for the gun access panel, so I had to fix that. And then everything else was looking pretty good. And then I checked all the wing roots and stuff like that to make sure everything was looking good. So yeah, there's only a few things to take care of, but right now we're in a good spot to where we can move on to the next phase here, and that's going to be laying down some alclads for a chipping base. This Mr. Surfacer away. Okay, so I know I jabbered on about spraying some alclad for chipping, but I've just decided to call an audible and completely change the game plan. Thinking about how I want to use the mask I created on my Cricut for the smoke rings, laying a bunch of masks over paint that has chipping fluid underneath it is just a recipe for disaster. Because I could be pulling up masks and I could detack them all I want, but they'll still be pulling up little parts of paint. So I'm just worried about I'm going to do a lot of harm to the paint job. So the plan now is I'm not going to spray any alclad. That's going to go back on the shelf for now. I'm going to do all the base paint. So I'll do the underside gray. I'll do my masking for the tailband. The underside kind of has a wraparound camo on the top of the wings. So I'll get the tan sprayed out, and then I'll start laying down masks, and then I'll spray on my camouflage. And then after all the paint is done, I'll go in and I'll either pencil chip with a Prismacolor pencil, or I'll use a very fine brush and some silver paint and do my chipping with a paintbrush or pencil. So that's the new game plan. Sometimes you just gotta adjust. I totally forgot that I wanted to use the mask, and you know, masking tape and chipping fluid just aren't buddies. So I think that's gonna be the best way for me to go and do this effectively. So that's the new game plan. I'm gonna get set up to start some paint. So I think we're gonna start with the underside here in a minute. So to aid in the painting process, I'm gonna do a combination of freehand mottling, and I'm also gonna use some stencils. So I have a huge variety of these photo etch stencils. These are from Ushi Vanter Austin. I have a couple of their sets, but basically it's just photo etch with cutouts on it that you can lay on the model, spray over it. So I have small, medium, large. This is one of the finer ones. So I tend to use these kind of randomly in areas. I hold them off at different distances off the piece, off the model, and you know, you can get kind of harder edged, softer edge, you know, depending on what you need. So I have those. Also have these cardboard ones from Masterpiece Models. These are handy because they're a little bit more flexible. You can get them in wing roots and they kind of stick a little bit better. So I have these two. And then I also have a few sets from Propeller 77. And these are very flexible. They're made out like rubbery plastic. So I have a different couple, you know, they're different shapes, kind of like the Ushi ones, but these are all very flexible. These are actually wood grain, which I don't need. But so all the painting is going to be a combination of freehand modeling and then stencil modeling as well. So just so you know that I'm going to be using these as part of the painting process as we move forward to make things a little bit easier for paint. All right, first color we got here is Neutral Gray 43 in the PS 771. I'm going to start freehand. This is at 12 PSI. So I'm just going to work my way around. I got this thing kind of at the 2 setting with the needle, so it's not too open. And since this is the darker tone of grays, I'm going to focus closer to panel lines. Not on the panel lines, but focus to those areas and any areas that I consider to be darker shadow areas. Now I'll start using some of the stencils in some certain areas. So I have these hooked on these like little like alligator clips, makes them easier to just kind of put them down. And right now these are just directly on the model. There's no space in between. They're just right on there. Okay, so next color is Light Ghost Gray, FS 3675. This just went directly into the same color cup as the Neutral Gray and then just mixed in with it. So, you know, it doesn't need to be anything special. It's gonna be the same kind of process, but I'm gonna focus towards the centers of panel lines now. And then, you know, if there's little like, there's these little like circular hatches, anything I want to pop out, I'll hit with this. I usually like to hit like the flaps or landing flaps with a lighter color because it will distinguish after you do the blend coat. So I'm actually going to block out the entire flap area here. Okay. And if you do this and you feel like you went too heavy, it's okay. You can always go back when you do your blend coat and you can blend over that just a little bit heavier with the blend color. One thing you do got to watch out if you're using these Ushi stencils is on the edges there are gate marks where they cut the photo etch, and sometimes if they go against your subject, they scratch the paint just like it did right here. So just got to be careful with that. That's why I like. Okay, so next up is the blend coat, and we're using the color 1. This has been mixed in a color cup off outside of the airbrush. It is about 60% Mr. Leveling Thinner to 40% actual color. So I want this to be relatively thin because I don't want it to obliterate the pre-shading. So we're just going to slowly build this color up over all of the mottling work that we did. All right, so blending that took a little bit longer than expected, but it's blended in. If you can see here, let it focus in. There's still some of that modeling and pre-shading showing through. You know, it's not too stark. I might do one more blend coat, but I'm pretty happy with that right now. All right, so I got the underside leading edge of the wings mast, and then the side of the radiator. And then what I've decided for the tail planes is that I'm gonna spray them and then touch them up later. It's just this curve is hard to mask. If I would have left them separate, it would have been a lot easier, but I'm just gonna paint it and then mask it and touch it up later. I think it's easier to mask that off with the tan and then respray the gray. So yeah, I'll catch up on that later. So I'm just getting paints ready. And the first paint that we're going to spray down and model coat is going to be Dark Earth Field Drab. And we'll do the same kind of thing. Will be combination of freehand model and stencil work. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to get all the mask off areas sprayed first. Getting nice and looking good. And then we'll start to blend in everything. I think I missed the middle color, but I'm finally spraying color 4, which is the topside color and the wraparound color. All right, so I got the base coat, top color all painted. It's a weird color to work with in that the paint is kind of already thin. So with me adding Mr. Leveling Thinner, it really thinned it out. And it took a lot of coats to blend it in. And in the right light, you can see some pretty good tonal variation. I don't think you can see it from this top side angle. But it's also going to change a little bit once we start adding the camouflage in as well. But I'm going to grab medical glove here. So this has just been the last coat literally just went down. I just cleaned up the airbrush. And Mr. Leveling Thinner, you know, takes out a little bit longer to dry. I don't want to put a fingerprint in it. I do have a couple of touch-ups to fix, but that's the underside. So I need to touch up this all these, the stabilizers, because I just decided to work around that. So I'll go repaint that later. But yeah, it's looking pretty good. Yeah, definitely some good tonal variety in there. It's just not brown. There's some shading in there. Looks a little faded. And then, of course, once we add the smoke rings, I'll add another layer effect to it as well. So I'm going to let this I'm going to touch up a couple things, and then I'm going to let it just sit overnight before I start processing adding on these. All right, so I got the tailband area masked off. It's looking pretty good. Did some measuring, kept it consistent with this little L, and just measured it off. And then I'm spraying the color 6 white. This paint is super duper thin. This actually covers a lot easier than I thought it was. The paint seems super duper thin, but it actually sprays pretty well. Alrighty. Well, I guess I'll do this live. Everyone says unmasking is the most satisfying part of model building. I tend to disagree. So as you see, I used masking tape for curves from Tamiya, and then I used this 18 mil, I believe it is. Yeah, 18 mil to back mask off of it. So I'm always worried with this Tamiya tape for curves. It is super tacky that I'm going to get some paint lift. I did detack it on my arm beforehand. Oh, there's a little bit of a paint lift right there. Very small dot. Yeah, right there. It's a little paint lift. This curve going over this hump was tough, and I won't be surprised if I lose some paint on the very top of that hump. Okay, well, I was kind of waiting for that to happen, but right at the very top of this hump, I lost some paint. So I'm going to have to fix that later on, but hey, the band is there. It's looking the part. Okay, so to fix this big old chunk of paint I ripped off the top of this hump, I just laid out a very simple coat of Ammo's liquid mask with a dumpy brush, and I just worked my way as close to the affected area as possible, and I have just the tiniest bit of paint in my airbrush. I'm going to wait another minute for this to dry, and then I've tapped the needle back as far as I can go, so I am not dumping out a ton of paint. And then, let's see if I can get this here. I want to shoot away from the white. There, I think I took care of it. So I'm gonna let that. I think I can pull this liquid mask off now. Let's see what happens. Still looks a little tacky. I might have sprayed that a little bit too early, but let's see if I can yank this off here. Oh yeah, it's coming off. There we go. Look at that. Oh, that makes me feel good. Yeah. Okay, so paint is all fixed. The line is still straight. That's a win. Yeah. As I was saying, I think we're all ready now where we can go start laying some masks and stuff out for the smoke ring camo. So I'm going to put this off to the side and I'll show you how I went about creating the masks for the smoke rings and the plan for painting them. So it's a 3-part mask, so it's, you know, this part, and this part. Basically what I'm planning to do is I'll lay down the cardboard mask and then I will get this aligned how I like it on the model, and then I will paint it. Get like a little tiny little worm. I'm going to lay it on the back of it, of one piece of this. Okay. I'm gonna lay it up, and I want it to sit not directly on the surface, but lift up a little bit around the outside of it. Like so. So then I'll take this and get it roughly aligned like so. Okay, for the sake of doing it, I just have some black paint in here. So basically what I want to do is I want to try to spray this as a 90-degree angle as possible so I get some feathered edges. So I'm going to build this up. The mask kind of floats on there like so. You can see from the side. And then when I pull off each layer, like so, I get my smoke ring like that. So that's what I need to do, and I need to do it many times. So, you know, I don't think I'm going to film me doing each of these, every single one of these on the actual kit, because it's going to take forever. So I'm just going to kind of go and do it, and then, you know, obviously I'm going to use the proper paints. So that's going to be the process of how I'm going to do my smoke rings. Okay, it's been a 4-day painting process, but the smoke rings are done. I just finished doing some touch-ups with a little bit of the actual smoke ring color, honing some in, and then some of the tan color as well. After I gave everything got down, I kind of gave everything a filter of very thinned brown because these were a little stark. But here it is looking the part. Looks pretty good. I'm happy how it came out. So I'm going to call this episode about paint a wrap. Sorry I didn't show the actual like laying down the mask and painting. It was just so labor intensive, and laying them down and making sure that they're all in a good spot. And then like these ones that wrapped around the leading edge were a pain in the ass. And then any of these ones and these tight ones were also quite a pain. So I apologize for not actually showing me painting it, but it would have taken forever to do that. But this is where we're at, looking happy. I'm going to go give this a gloss coat. I am a gloss before decals, guys, but the next episode will focus on decals and applying some decals and getting it ready for the next phases. So, all right. So before I gave it a gloss coat, I just went over everything with some 2500 Infinity sanding sponge, just to kind of smooth out all the surfaces. If there's any raised areas where I did some masking or anything like that, some flurm, get rid of some stuff. And then I just gave it a quick coat of super clear gloss by MRP. Make sure this is in focus here. This is just ready to go right out of the bottle. So I gave it a couple coats. The one thing you gotta be careful with the MRP super clear gloss, if you dump it on, you can run the risk of eating your paint. So just be careful about that. But about 2 coats on both sides, so it's all nice and smooth and it's ready for decals. So the next episode will be focusing on decals and moving forward. So yeah, that's gonna wrap this up. So One last kind of look. Looking pretty good.
I'm pretty happy with it.
All right, we'll see you in the next installment.